Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. Welcome to Thursday. Big day yesterday, and we're going to hear more from Jagmeet Singh today. Apparently, he's having a real news conference, not just a YouTube video. But when we come back, can we really have a carbon tax election? I think it's a question worth asking, don't you?
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need to resolve to resist.
Yes, please like the station right now if you can, because it beats the suppression that we get routinely from YouTube, and it beats Trudeau's censorship, which I'll get to again later, because that's one of the reasons we need a election sooner rather than later. Will we get one, though? Is what happened yesterday with Jagmeet Singh, his ripping up the loose coalition deal with Justin Trudeau, is that really a stunt, as Pierre Poilievre said? Well, we'll get to Pierre Poilievre's statement yesterday. I'm not going to play Jagmeet's YouTube video again, because I mean, it is a piece of half-baked socialist propaganda. But let's just watch a few minutes of Justin Trudeau's reaction. Now, bear in mind, when this story broke yesterday, it was about, 11:30 going on noon. I was actually writing for the Post Millennial at the time, and this story broke. And Brian Lilly actually got it first from the Toronto Sun. Good for you, Brian. And we suddenly learned the coalition was over. I know it's not a formal coalition, but that's what it was, a de facto coalition. This propping up of the Trudeau government by Jagmeet Singh. And he said it was over. So while this was happening, this is what makes this so fascinating, is that Trudeau was literally in the midst of a news conference in Newfoundland. And he's got a couple of ministers with him. And he's not even talking about it. And he's talking about housing, which, of course, he's done absolutely nothing to alleviate the housing crisis in this country. But he's talking about that. And as soon as the reporters get a chance to ask questions, obviously they ask him what's important, not your stupid housing announcement, which is not going to change anything. But what about this deal being over with Jagmeet Singh? And look, just watch Trudeau for a minute, and we'll get to Poilievre's response in a minute.
Prime Minister Trudeau, you no longer have the support of the NDP. Your party is trailing in the polls, and the Conservatives are calling for an election. Is it time to send Canadians to the polls?
We're here today because we're delivering on school lunches and school food for thousands of kids across the province. And we're making investments that are going to be helping hundreds of thousands of kids across the country as people step up. These are the kinds of things that Canadians are looking for. As I traveled across the country this summer, people talk to me about making ends meet. They talk to me about the high cost of rent and the need for more housing. They talk to me about the environment and climate change and the impacts of it. And these are the things that we're focused on. I'll let others focus on politics, but I will point out that I really hope the NDP stays focused on how we can deliver for Canadians, as we have over the past years, rather than focusing on politics.
So I'm above politics. That was his mantra yesterday. Don't ask me about this deal ending because it's not important to me. I'm above politics. I'm the leader of Canada, and I intend to stay the leader of Canada for the rest of my life. He might as well have said that. Louis XIV, la tête c'est moi. That's Justin Trudeau. I am Canada. I'm not a politician. I am your leader. Yes, where have we heard that before? Seems to me there was a guy in Germany who used to talk that way. But that's exactly how Justin Trudeau talks, and it's frightening. It's absolutely frightening because he doesn't want to face reality, doesn't even think it's an issue of the day to discuss. Politics? You want me to talk about what? Do you think I'm a politician or something? My God, have you got me wrong? So we're supposedly getting a response, an official news conference from Jagmeet Singh today, which are tortuous events to watch. But listen to Pierre Poilievre yesterday. I think he really raised an interesting question.
Sellout Singh has pulled a stunt. The Sellout Singh stunt today, where he came out and claimed that he was wrong, that the coalition was a bad, costly idea, but he refuses to commit to voting for a carbon tax election. So my message to Sellout Singh is this. If you're serious about ending your costly carbon tax coalition with Trudeau, then commit today to voting for a carbon tax election at the earliest confidence vote in the House of Commons. That way we can have a carbon tax election where Canadians will decide between the costly coalition of Trudeau and Sellout Singh that tax your food, punish your work, take your money, double your housing costs, and unleash crime and drugs on your street, or common sense conservatives who will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. In so doing that, we'll bring home the country we love, where hard work earns a powerful paycheck that buys affordable food, gas, and homes in safe neighborhoods, where our military is strong and our people are safe, where immigration is welcome but controlled, where drug addictions are treated, not worsened, where children can play safely in the streets, where the flag flies high, where we are the freest country on earth, and where the common sense of the common people are united for our common home, Canada. Let's bring it home.
I like that response from Poilievre because it doesn't just recite the current conservative talking points about axe the tax, stop the crime. And these are slogans, they're talking points, and you repeat them often enough, they actually lose their meaning. But he talks about the Canada we all remember prior to Justin Trudeau. Talks about people earning a decent living and keeping it because the taxes aren't so high. About crime in the streets not being so important. About people being proud of the country. Now, if you've been to one of these Axe the Tax rallies, that's what you come home with. And I did an episode on this some months ago when I attended one of Poilievre's Axe the Tax rallies in Ottawa. I was very impressed, not just because he wants to axe the tax, because obviously that's imperative. And that's something that's popular with a huge majority of Canadians today. But he also channeled Ronald Reagan, as I said at the time, to talk about what's possible in this country again, to think about it being a positive thing to be free, a positive thing to have liberty, a positive thing to be able to work for your family and just be normal. And instead of the government constantly imposing stupid and crazy concepts upon you that you have to endorse and support, or else you're ostracized and alienated by this government. So I was very impressed with Poilievre's response. But is he right about Sellout Singh not wanting an election? Is this really a political stunt? This is the question I wrestled with all night long. Because if you saw my broadcast yesterday, I said this is an opportunity to stop this Liberal government early, possibly, I'm suggesting by November. But I think Poilievre's suggesting that Singh doesn't really want to do that. But I think what he's doing here is saying, go ahead. If you're serious, saying if this coalition's really over, force an election, do something. Put your money where your mouth, put your politics where your mouth is. Have an election on the carbon tax. If you love the carbon tax so much, go ahead. If you really think this election is between you and Poilievre, go ahead, do it. Move forward on it. Just like Poilievre last week dared Jagmeet Singh to break up the coalition. He's daring Jagmeet Singh, this week to have an election on the carbon tax. I think that's very smart. Will he? Well, look at these numbers. That's pretty pathetic. The NDP in this poll is in third place. In other polls, they're in fourth place behind the Bloc. So that's not great. These numbers are awful for the NDP. What has to happen, and I've been in politics for most of my life, not as a politician, but as somebody analyzing it and feeling the repercussions of it and trying to interpret it either as a military officer or as a journalist. What has to happen is the NDP support has to go up. They have to take some support from the Liberals, and I think the NDP might go for this. I don't know if they will, given these numbers right now, unless they think they can make it up during an election campaign, which is always possible. But these numbers are abysmal. The Conservatives remain 20 points ahead of the Liberals. Getting, I think the last estimate I saw was 223 seats in the House of Commons. That would put them at the largest majority in history. The two previous ones being Conservative, actually. John Diefenbaker in 1958, 208 seats. And Brian Mulroney in 1984, I think 218, if I'm not mistaken. That one I don't remember automatically, and I should have looked it up before going on the air. But Brian Mulroney currently has the record for number of seats in a majority government. And of course, that's, was that 84? Yes, it was 84. And of course, in 88, he ran on the free trade issue and won a majority again, but it was greatly reduced. Now, can Poilievre hold on to these numbers? You bet he can, because Justin Trudeau is destined for oblivion. He's in a hole, as the video with the steel worker from Algoma in Sault Ste. Marie demonstrated. He's in a hole. I mean, look at this. The Trudeau Singh costly coalition, soaring grocery prices. And this, of course, is Singh's little gambit right now. Every opportunity, he says he's against price gouging. He's the one who led like the one-man protest boycott against Loblaws, which was an utter failure because most people realize grocery stores are not doing this just to make us suffer, that their profit margin is actually quite low. The prices are going up because of the carbon tax, because it costs a lot to transport food around this country now. Costs a lot to grow the food because farms have to be heated. And all of that is subject to the carbon tax. It's a comprehensive tax that makes everybody suffer. And the more you have to use energy, the more you suffer. So Singh can pretend this is about price gouging. He could be like Kamala Harris and say, we're going to stop the price gouging and we're going to control prices and we're going to have a communist country and we're going to have empty shelves. That's where this is leading. I've said that before. But Singh hasn't got a hope in hell of winning this election, and he knows that. So where is he going to go? We need to push him in that direction. We need to push him in that direction because this country needs an election much sooner rather than later. Biggest story of the day yesterday. Biggest story of the day yesterday, besides the deal being broken in Canada, totally ignored by the Canadian media. But this affects Canadian media. This affects this station. This affects all YouTubers out there, all independent media, and a lot of new media, and even mainstream media that are reliant upon social media. Guess what's happening in the States? Now, Merrick Garland, who you might know as the Attorney General, this lying, yes, I'll say lying SOB is the same guy who targets parents at school board meetings who oppose critical race theory, who goes after pro-life people as domestic terrorists, who lines up all of Joe Biden's political opponents and gets them arrested and sent to jail. This is the guy who ensured that everybody who even peacefully attended the January 6th riot, who just happened to be standing there when the mayhem broke out, got arrested and sent to jail. Some of them languished there for months without a trial. Now, this is Merrick Garland. This guy was almost a judge in the Supreme Court, actually. So
This side piece is the source of all my career.
But I'm going to go to this news conference here where he says, "My God, America, it's happening again. Russian disinformation as the election campaign is upon us." So listen to what he says here. It's comical. This guy, this clown, wants to shut down not just so-called fake news media sites, but he wants to shut down all conservative broadcasters who apparently had something to do with a media outlet out of Tennessee, which some outlets are reporting to be Tenet Media. He did not say that. Might be, might not be, probably is. I don't know. I can't say for certain. But because of some dubious connection with this media outlet that reportedly received $10 million from Russian news, there's a conspiracy afoot here.
This morning, we unsealed an indictment in the Southern District of New York of Konstantin Kalashnikov and Elena Afanasieva, two Russian-based employees of RT, a Russian state-controlled media outlet. They are charged with conspiring to commit money laundering and to violate the Foreign Agents Registration Act. That law, enacted nearly a century ago, was enacted to ensure that the American people were informed when a foreign power engages in political activities or seeks to influence public discourse. The American people are entitled to know when a foreign power is attempting to exploit our country's free exchange of ideas in order to send around its own propaganda.
Where have we heard this before? I'll be back to Merrick Garland in a sec. Does this not remind you of the 2016 election when Donald Trump was accused of colluding with the Russians to take the election because the Russians wanted Trump to win that election? Although that's probably ridiculous. I think they wanted Hillary Clinton to win that election. But listen to some more.
I'm sorry.
Do you get the idea here? Just a minute. Do you get the idea that Merrick Garland is reading this for the first time? Because he stumbles at a number of occasions, doesn't seem to have read it. It's like this was put in front of him and say, Merrick, read this right now because we're going to put a stop to this so-called Russian disinformation.
And that is what we alleged happened in this case. In the wake of Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, RT, which was then known as Russia Today, was dropped by its American distributors. The company ceased its formal operations in the United States, and the European Union, the UK, and Canada banned RT's broadcasting. But as RT itself has boasted, the government of Russia continued to use RT to direct disinformation and propaganda. In the wake of Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine, RT's editor-in-chief said the company had built, quote, an entire empire of covert projects designed to shape public opinion in Western audiences. We allege that as part of that effort, RT and its employees, including the defendants, implemented a nearly $10 million scheme to fund and direct a Tennessee-based company to publish and disseminate content deemed favorable to the Russian government. To implement this scheme, the defendants directed the company to contract with U.S.-based social media influencers to share this content on their platforms. The subject matter and content of many of the videos published by the company were often consistent with Russia's interest in amplifying U.S. domestic divisions in order to weaken U.S. opposition to core Russian interests, particularly its ongoing war in Ukraine.
Now, I have to laugh because if you want to see disinformation about the war in Ukraine, watch CNN or even Fox News, who still claim that Ukraine is going to win this war. And the war is not over. And here's Ukraine trying to sell their own weapons around the world, as we reported in Human Events, and yet still begging for weapons from Canada, from the United States, and other NATO countries. This is a farce. Ukraine is literally weeks, a couple of months away from complete defeat in this war. The so-called invasion of the Kursk region was an utter failure. You won't see that on the mainstream media, but it resulted in the deaths of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers and was a complete fiasco. Once again, you won't see anything but disinformation from the mainstream media about how Russia is just losing this war badly. It's all a crock. And yet we continue to hear that Russia is the one with and what about why Russia initiated this war? Did it have anything to do at all with NATO insisting Ukraine become a member of NATO? Did that have anything to do with it at all? Did it have anything to do with promises from the United States that NATO was not going to expand ever eastward right to Moscow's border? Nope, nothing to do with that, according to Merrick Garland.
The company never disclosed to the influencers or to their millions of followers its ties to RT and the Russian government. Instead, the defendants and the company claimed that the company was sponsored by a private investor. But that private investor was a fictitious persona. The charges unsealed this morning do not represent the end of the investigation. It remains active and ongoing. In a separate enforcement action, the Justice Department is seizing 32 internet domains that the Russian government and the Russian-sponsored actors have used to engage in a covert campaign to interfere and influence the outcome of our country's elections. As alleged in our court filings, President...
Okay, so they're seizing what they call us look like fake news accounts, and they decide what fake news is. So anybody could be subject to having their account seized by the U.S. Justice Department. You know what's funny about this is that the Biden-Harris administration talks about Russia like it's the enemy of mankind. That we cannot talk to Russia. We cannot deal with Russia. We cannot have any sort of diplomatic relations with Russia. We cannot sit down and talk civilly with Russia. Although it's a funny thing, we tried to do that with the Soviet Union, didn't we, to avert nuclear war. Richard Nixon instituted détente with the Soviet Union after years, decades of Cold War that came very close to a nuclear confrontation. We are literally that close to a nuclear war right now with Russia because of NATO's reckless behavior in Ukraine and the United States' delusional behavior in Ukraine. But yet Merrick Garland and Joe Biden say, we can't talk to Russia. They're just too evil. It's exactly like a lot of people used to say, you can't deal with communists because they're just so evil. I'm as anti-communist as anybody, but I'd rather talk to a communist in Russia than have a nuclear war. Not the United States today. And the irony is, Russia's not communist anymore. If anyone's noticed, the Cold War ended like 30 years ago now. And we still talk about Russia like it's a communist threat. Do you know where the communist threat is? It's in the Joe Biden administration. The Biden administration is more communist in its outreach, in its economics. Kamala Harris is more communist in her policies, turning the United States into Soviet America. That's where the communist threat is. But you won't hear that from Merrick Garland. We'll just listen to the end of it.
Putin's inner circle, including Sergei Kirillenko, directed Russian public relations companies to promote disinformation and state-sponsored narratives as part of a program to influence the 2024 U.S. presidential election.
All right, that's all we need to do. So what is this all about? It's about tainting what they call influencers. And yes, and let's have a look at the story here. And of course, this fascinates me here. Conservative influencers. These aren't journalists. They're not reporters. Yes, and that here we have old Benny Johnson there on the right of the picture, and Ruben. And these guys are conservative influencers. They're not journalists because they don't work for CNN or MSNBC. They're not real journalists because of that, according to Merrick Garland and this left-wing rag, The Guardian, which put the story out. And apparently these guys are on their knees right now saying, sorry, we didn't know that this company had anything to do with the Russians. We didn't know they were paid by the Russians. And this whole news conference, this indictment, is geared at shaming and tarring conservative, small c conservative broadcasts on social media. That's all this is about. And for saying that anybody who's not part of the mainstream media message on the election is controlled by Russia. They're pawns of Putin. Can't be a worse thing today. That's like being a pawn of Joseph Stalin or Khrushchev during the Cold War. That's all this is about. And ultimately, who are they really trying to get at here? Tucker Carlson.
Does anyone really believe that? No one believes that. But people can care less about the individual.
That's the crowd that came out to hear Tucker Carlson when he came to Canada. And watch Trudeau get in lockstep with his policy to start to go after people in Canada who are so-called conservative influencers. I don't know how many conservatives I influence, but I don't consider myself an influencer. My God, it's the last thing I'd ever want to be. I am a journalist. I work for new media. I'm an independent media. You see me on other new media shows, independent media shows, such as Redacted, every week. I'm here to tell the truth. I'm here to be objective about the news. I'm here to tell you an alternate story when all you're getting is one from the government. Now, Justin Trudeau will latch on to this indictment and try to go after conservative influences in Canada. And who are those people? That's all the independent media, including me, yes. But also stations like Rebel News and True North and other people who are out there trying to get the truth out, trying to give you a different perspective. They're all going to be grouped together by Justin Trudeau as being suspect. Yes, as being somehow tainted. Not because I have no idea if they had anything to do with this company in Tennessee, but Justin Trudeau will take it that much farther and say, if you say anything on your YouTube broadcast that's in any way questioning the war in Ukraine, from my perspective, then you must be in the pocket of Vladimir Putin, in the pocket of the Russians, and there's no worse place to be as far as Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden are concerned. And we know these two colluded during the Freedom Convoy to silence Freedom Convoy activists and participants by keeping their social media accounts closed or censored. They didn't just shut down bank accounts. They shut down social media accounts. That's what Trudeau will try again. And that's why, even if we have a fall election, we have to keep our eyes on Justin Trudeau because he will try to control that election just like Joe Biden is trying to control the election in the United States right now. This is all about controlling the election by controlling the communicators, by controlling the media. Increasingly, people like you and I are getting our information from social media. We don't believe the mainstream media anymore. We know it lies to us. We know it has an agenda. We know it's tendentious, and we know that those lies are in keeping with what the liberal hegemonic discourse tells them. So that's what's going on here. Let's not forget it. And yes, I want a fall election because we need to defeat Justin Trudeau and the Online Harms Act more than anything else to preserve our freedom and free speech in this country. But watch out for where Justin Trudeau takes censorship in advance of that election. We have to be very cautious and very careful. Justin Trudeau is never going to be a friend of democracy. He's always going to be an opponent of free speech. And we have to remember that as we go forth. So let's hope Jagmeet Singh isn't just pulling a political stunt here and there's some veracity to what he's saying. Don't hold your breath, but let's force him into an election. Thanks for watching today, folks. God bless you, and I'll be back again tomorrow.